Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to talk about competition. Competition is a good thing. When you put two things up against each other, they can only strive to make each other better. And who gets rewarded? That's right, you and me, if we're not part of that competition, but we're in the sidelines watching the competition. It's like Coke and Pepsi, right? Coke and Pepsi keep trying to outdo each other. But you know what it did? It sold more Coke and Pepsi. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Action Force made by Valaverse and G.I. Joe made by Hasbro. They seem like these competitive lines going against each other. And you know what? I just keep seeing them getting better every day. And a smaller toy company like Valaverse really challenging price limits and stuff like that, I think is making Hasbro raise their head a little bit and realize that they can't charge an arm and a leg for stuff. And just off the bat, I'm going to talk about the HasLab. That's right. Marvel last year tried to do that HasLab for a car for $350. And Valaverse announced that they were going to do a car too, but this was going to carry 5 or 6 action figures and have like a turret and rocket launchers on the top. And the whole time kept saying that that price on that HasLab was way out of control. So the guess for anybody was going to be that price should be much lower than $350. And you know what? When the HasLab Dragonfly came out and got announced at $275, I think it shocked a lot of people that the price was $275. I mean, you're getting a full-size 6-inch scale helicopter with a figure with a whole bunch of accessories and a stand, and it was $275, nowhere near that $350 they were trying to get for that car last year. And I think the competition, or the word of the competition, made Hasbro perk up and realize they couldn't charge $350, $400 for that helicopter, that they had to keep that price fairly reasonable. Now at JoeFest this last weekend, Valaverse had a panel and they announced the price range for their car. And they showed off the prototype, which looked pretty cool. It sat 4 or 5 figures inside, had room in the back, had a big turret for one of their guys, had an interchangeable rocket launcher on top. It looked decent. It looked good. And when it's all painted up, it's going to look fantastic. And you know what he said? He said the price range for the vehicle with those accessories and a driver was going to be between $170 and $190. He said there was a little bit of a price range because he's still looking for the manufacturing, but that's what he's getting. So no more than $190. So that is $80, $85 less than the Dragonfly, and $160 less than that HasLab Charger was a year ago. That's pretty amazing. And then he announced price drops on his figures. So hopefully we're going to see Hasbro take note of these price drops and realize, hey, we're a big company. We're much bigger. We can drop our prices back a little bit. I'm not holding my breath, but maybe, because Valaverse is still a little bit expensive, but you know what? They are a smaller company and they're not dealing in the same levels of numbers that Hasbro is. But I wonder if Hasbro's taking note that nobody's buying their figures, or very few figures are being bought out of stores at those much higher price points. So they are going to have to take note of those price points eventually. But let's get back to competition, okay? So we got the Arctic Snow Shadow from G.I. Joe. They announced the Snow Job for G.I. Joe. We got an Arctic Bat coming. And lo and behold, this weekend at JoeFest, Valaverse announces snow figures and snow ghillie suit. And that's pretty cool. I think he didn't care for the snow stuff, but he's got some Arctic snow stuff coming. And I think that's direct competition with Hasbro because they're doing the snow stuff. And then, in a reversal of fortunes, Valaverse has been doing these like desert troopers, you know, the Condor desert. They got that desert look. They got the desert tactical gear. And lo and behold, Desert Commando Snake Eyes pops out. So are we going to get more desert figures from G.I. Joe? I know we had that Dusty. So we could be seeing like a whole world building of figures from the snow to the jungle to the desert, all because Valaverse and Hasbro keep trying to one-up each other. And you know what else started? We were talking about this on our live stream a month or so ago, the Toy Duo. And if you talk about the weapons, in the first kind of waves of G.I. Joe, they were basically just like molded plastic with no paint apps on them. But Valaverse was giving you these really intricately detailed and painted like weapons for the figures. And then all of a sudden, Hasbro started upping their game and started doing a little bit better on the accessories, adding more paint apps, making the guns a little better. Now, you don't get a G.I. Joe figure that has a rifle with a magazine without that magazine coming out. And I think that's pretty cool. Competition is really making it better for us, the collector, because the more Valaverse, being that small, independent action figure company, trying to build like that military grade toy line, keeps pushing on Hasbro, who's got that embedded G.I. Joe. They got all the nostalgia. They got the big money behind them. And you got these two people pushing, and I see good things happening because G.I. Joe has to get better to compete with Valaverse. And Valaverse can't just rest on its laurels. They got to keep up in their game too. Their website crashed twice in a week. I think it's time that they invest some and upgrade that website so they don't have a crash when they upload something that's very desirable, because they need to get that taken care of. I did not get an opportunity to go to JoeFest, so I missed out one of the exclusives, and I'm really looking forward to it hitting their website. That's the Warpath, and I'm hoping that the website doesn't crash and that I do get the opportunity to be able to order it. That being said, there were some great releases by G.I. Joe, surprise releases, and you got the Cobra Ills came out today. It was super cool. If you haven't seen the pictures, here's one now. They're really cool. I did order that because I think those underwater figures are fantastic. But competition is what I'm talking about, right? So you got two companies and they're going head to head, and it's only going to get better for you and me. It's very interesting to me to think about how G.I. Joe from Hasbro and Action Force from Valaverse kind of all birthed from exactly the same place. Because in 1964, just a little history here, in 1964, G.I. Joe was created. So they licensed the 12-inch figure to Palitoy, who created Action Man over in Europe, and they created more European-centric soldiers that they could sell. And those grew into a different line, and eventually in the early 80s, Palitoy was making a smaller version of a character called Action Force, and that was in direct competition with the Kenner Star Wars figures. And in the US, they were making G.I. Joe, Real American Hero figures, and they had a cartoon, and then there was an Action Force comic over there, there was a G.I. Joe cartoon, and anyways, then eventually G.I. Joe kind of licensed over, and Palitoy started creating the G.I. Joe line over there because it became synonymous with the characters in the TV show and not necessarily how we think of G.I. Joe in the past. So anyways, the Action Force line kind of lay dormant until Valaverse on a Kickstarter, I think in 2019. And then you got the G.I. Joe, which is building on their nostalgic brand. And you know what? Those two figure lines are going to keep competing against each other, and they're going to keep improving and keep getting better. And the people who are going to benefit from that are you and me. So just to show you how this works, this is an Action Force figure, but it's got my Hasbro Selfie Series figure head on it. So I think it's perfect fit. And I'm just showing this off because I think it's the perfect way to show how you can take your Action Force figures like Bone Collector and your G.I. Joe classified figures, and you could pair them up, and man, they really look cool together, and you can do a whole lot of stuff with them. And I think they complement each other, and I think it's fantastic that we're getting the competition from the two separate companies. Okay, so I just want to say thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. It's a short little video to talk about competition between G.I. Joe and Action Force and how we're going to be the beneficiaries of those two standing off against each other regularly, trying to outdo each other with the types of figures, with the character lines, with how they fit in, and the accessories that go with them. You can mix and match your products and tell me what you think. Are you a G.I. Joe fan? Are you an Action Force fan? Do you pick one over the other? Are you G.I. Joe because you're just totally nostalgic? Are you Action Force because you think they're super cool? Or do you think they work so fantastic together that you are on both sides of the fence? Tell me what you guys think, and we'll see you next time. And as always, everybody, have a fantastic day.